welcome into Grimm's Gates of Horror. My name is Grimm, this is the new haven for all things horror movie related, and today I'm going to be ranking all of the Fear Street movies, all four, from the worst to the best. And if you're not aware of these movies, let me tell you a little bit more about them. So the Fear Street movies are based on the book series of the same name by R.L. Stine, who also did all the Goosebumps books. 3 of these movies were released as a trilogy, I think, in the summer of 2020. No, 2021 to be exact. And this was crazy because it was the first time any studio or streaming platform had done anything like this, where basically, I believe it was in July, where basically Fear Street Part 1, 1994 was released on Netflix on July 2nd of 2021, and then the week after that was Part 2, 1978, and then Part 3 was 1666, which released on the third week. So they kind of released episodically, each week after the other, kind of like what you see with TV shows. And just imagine that. Imagine making all 3 of these movies. Imagine back in the day they did that with Star Wars, where they filmed all 3 Star Wars movies, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, and then one week after the other, they'd release them like that, and just in the hype and the of that, there were talks about, people were thinking, oh my god, are they gonna do it this time with the new Fear Street Prom Queen? But that wasn't the case. But just this little time period in the year 2021 when the pandemic was happening, it was just one of those things that made you excited and was just so unique to its time. That's I feel there's some people where that was a canon event for them, because it was an event, all 3 of these movies, and it gave people something to look forward to each week, when everyone was depressed or stuck inside. This 4th one had to live up to that hype, and I don't it's crazy because there was really no hype for this movie. Some of the marketing, they tried to hype it up, but it's everyone thought that this was gonna be bad and everything. But if you don't know, they've been trying to make a Fear Street movie since 1997, when Hollywood Pictures acquired the rights to the series, but the project just never came to be. But then it just re-entered development from Fox in 2015, and the filming of the first trilogy happened back to back from in 2019, I believe, from March to September of 2019. So it was in development before the pandemic. So it's kind of crazy how this all worked out, where they were able to release it at such a time where it became such an event, and it's what people kind of needed at the time. Kind of because I believe Stranger Things season 4 released around that time as well, if I remember correctly. And so it was a weird, or was it that in 2022? It was something like that. But these shows and these movies are what kept people excited and kept people talking throughout the pandemic, at least for me, at least. And also, these movies were supposed to be released in theaters. I don't know how close they were supposed to release in theaters, but I believe the first Fear Street was supposed to be released in June of 2020, which everything started to kick up with the pandemic around April, I believe. Well, I can't remember. So it's just how crazy, it's just thinking about how many hurdles these movies went through, the first 3, and to see how much of an event it turned out to be. It's nowhere close to Endgame or No Way Home level, no, but it was just such a big part of the pandemic for me, and probably for a lot of horror fans. And I hope they do make more Fear Street movies, and I will get more into that once I get into the ranking. But I really hope they continue these Fear Street movies, or even make it a TV show, because I feel there is potential here for this franchise, which I will get into. So coming in last place and 4th place, we have the new Fear Street Prom Queen, and it hurts to put this in last place because there was so much potential. There was so much even when this was announced, I didn't really hear that much excitement for a new Fear Street movie, because people, I think this trilogy kind of had that effect that, not Back to the Future, because it's much lower than that, but I feel like people thought that the trilogy was perfect, and why add to that or why try and mess that up, as people like to say. But I was really interested because for one thing, I thought this was going to take place within the lore of the first trilogy, but it didn't. It was like completely like separate. It's like not even a spin-off. There's a couple references to the trilogy, but other than that, it's like it's completely like like independent. But Fear Street Prom Queen takes us back to Shayside High in 1988, where the race for prom queen turns into a blood-soaked nightmare, and we follow Laurie Granger, which I tried to think like if the name of this protagonist is like if there's like any references to other horror movies, because throughout the marketing they've been saying how this movie pays homage to Halloween, Prom Night, Carrie, and the only thing I can think of is Laurie. This character's name is spelled Lori, while Laurie from Halloween is spelled Alurie. And then Granger, I didn't find anything with that. But the film follows Laurie, an outsider with a dark family history, as she competes against the clique in her school called the Wolfpack, led by the ruthless Tiffany Falconer. As prom night approaches, candidates start disappearing, hunted by a mass killer wielding an axe. The film leans into like the classic horror tropes, but unlike its like predecessors, like the trilogy from before, this one struggled to build compelling characters or meaningful suspense. And there are some things I liked about this movie, but this movie was just a complete mess. First things first, the original Fear Street trilogy explored a lot of different themes: class struggle, generational trauma, and they touched on queer identity. I'm not going to talk too much about that because I'm a straight man, but they did touch upon that. And Prom Queen largely abandons these deeper narratives that a lot of people resonated with in the first trilogy, which I thought was a big disappointment. Instead, it settles for a simple rich versus poor dynamic, which, like, you see, like, with the Shady Side and Sunny Veilers, which, yeah, that was a big primal thing in the first movie, but it wasn't just the only, like, it wasn't the only, like, representation of rich versus poor, or, like, good versus bad, and it didn't just play on that. It had some other things to make it feel deep and, like, personal. And, like, Laurie represents, like, the underdog, and Tiffany embodies the privilege of the Sunny Veilers. And, like, you see this in, like, other movies, like The Outsiders is a great example. One of my favorite movies of all time. I really recommend checking that out, The Outsiders. And then we also have, like, West Side Story, for example, which that one talks more on, like, racial issues, and Stephen Sondheim, one of the best, like music composers. Stephen Sondheim, who wrote West Side Story, one of the best composers of all time. That's such a classic. So if you like this, like that, you'll like Outsiders, you'll like West Side Story, you'll like a lot of the Disney original movies have the same thing going on, like Teen Beach Movie, Descendants, but you get what I mean. They all feed off of this like good versus evil, two different sides of like the same town, same city, and this movie just misses opportunities to expand on the Shady Side's cursed history. And it just reduces like its world building to a few lines, or a few Easter eggs and references. Now, one thing I will say is the performances in this movie, I thought they did what they could with what they had. Ariana Greenblatt, she again, spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen these movies, I recommend go watching them. But Ariana Greenblatt is such an amazing actress, and I've followed her for like so many years now through her career, because I grew up watching Stuck in the Middle on Disney, and then I saw her in the Heights with Melissa Barrera, Anthony Ramos, Lin-Manuel Miranda's, like, I can't remember if that was his Broadway debut, but in that movie she played like the young version of one of the characters, and then she was in Infinity War as young Gamora. She was in as young Ahsoka. She was in that one movie with Adam Driver called 65. She was great in that. She was in Barbie. So the only like bad performance I could say, well, I haven't seen it, is Borderlands. I don't know if she's bad in that, but I wouldn't blame her for that, really, because the movie's just bad in general. But from what I've heard, but yeah, it's just you get this big actress. It kind of reminded me of like what they did with Drew Barrymore in Scream. You get a big actress, and then they're like the first one to die. But it's like, why? Like, her, like when you hear her scream in the movie, I'm like, oh my god, like, she would be such a great like scream queen. Well, she's scream queen now, but like a final girl, that would have been perfect. But anyways, hopefully she's in other horror movies after this, because she would just kill it even more. But then we have India Fowler, who delivers a solid performance as Laurie. She kind of reminds me of like, I forgot her name from The Craft. The main not no Katie was Sarah, I think it was, because Katie is from Mean Girls. That was Lindsay Lohan. I think in The Craft it was Sarah. She reminds me a lot of that actress, and like she brings this like quiet intensity to her role as the protagonist and final girl. But the script is what limits her emotional depth, in my opinion. And then you have Fina Straza, who plays Tiffany, who is like the rich, privileged girl who like lives in Sunnyvale, and it's like she has the expected mean girl cruelty. That's kind of like the Regina, like the just like that typical mean girl in school. But her character just lacks that complexity to make her stand out and to like show the actor's like versatility, or like try to bring that out more. But like other than that, the most of the supporting cast just feels underdeveloped, and like they're just really two-dimensional characters, and there's just no more I can say about that. And this time we have a different director in Matt Palmer, replacing Lee Janiak, who directed the other three movies, and you can just tell that there's a big dip in quality when it comes to like the direction and the production of this movie. Even when it comes to like the kills, you can tell like the effects are a lot cheaper. Probably not a lot, but like they are cheaper. You can tell. And like this movie just drags a bit more. It lacks the sharp pacing, and like I said, the thematic depth that made the previous films like stand out and make them what made the first three movies so eventful. One thing I will say is that there were a lot of kills in this movie. I believe the movie isn't even that long. I could be wrong, but like I felt like there was a kill like back to back, and I really appreciate that. But they also just kind of like lacked creativity compared to like in Fear Street with like the bread slicer, and like I believe they did pay homage to a few movies with some of the kills, but again, none of them were original, if that makes sense. And also, this film kind of like tries to attempt like the whodunit structure that you see in like Scream and like a murder mystery, but it just fumbles the execution, because it's like you're trying to figure out who the killer is, and it's like at some point you're just like, okay, I don't see how it could be any of the teenagers, and because it turns out being Tiffany's weirdly, and it's just the finale just feels like a cheap twist than like a satisfying payoff. And to me, this movie just felt like a cheap imitation of like the franchise's best elements from like the original trilogy. It does deliver some slasher thrills that feel like kind of like nostalgic and classic, but it just ultimately feels like a missed opportunity to expand the Fear Street universe in like a meaningful way. And like, I mean, I was watching this with Issa, which you haven't seen my last video, or the Final Destination video. I was visiting my friend Issa, who's also my editor, and we watched this movie together because we both like love this trilogy, and she was like, oh, and I remember she was like, oh my god, I hope they tease like the next trilogy. I hope there's gonna be 2 more movies after this one, and we didn't get that. Instead, we got a post-credit scene where basically the mother made like the symbol of the ritual that the Good family does in the first trilogy, some like satanic like symbol out of her blood, but like they don't really explain or like say what it is. Maybe they're teasing a sequel, but I feel like they should that they could do something better with this franchise, and I will get on that in the other rankings. But yeah, Fear Street Prom Queen, 4th place. Let's move into 3rd place. And 3rd place, this one is Fear Street Part 2, 1978. And it sucks to put this like lower because I love Friday the 13th. it's like one of my favorite horror franchises of all time. Jason is my favorite slasher. So, this is part two, and it's set in the summer of 1978 as we see Ziggy Berman retelling the story of like how she encountered Sarah Fear, or like the curse, and it happened at the summer camp of 1978, Camp Nightwing. In the movie follows a group of teenagers as they become entangled in the dark history of Shadyside. The story is and basically Dina and Josh from the first part are seeking answers from C. Berman, Ziggy, and who was like the only survivor of the Nightwing Camp massacre. And so we witness like the tragic events unfold of like Ziggy Berman's and her sister and other campers, who the terrifying killer of Tommy Slater, and who becomes possessed by Sarah Fear and goes on a brutal killing spree. And the reason I put this a little low is because I feel like this movie didn't really expand on the lore as much as like the others. Like it does answer a couple things, but it doesn't feel as substantial and as important as like the first and like third parts, if that makes sense. And let me know what you think about this down below too. Let me know what your rankings are of these movies down below as well as I'm doing this. So I really like to hear your thoughts and your explanation as to why you rank these movies, because everyone has a different opinion, and I like to listen to other people's opinions on why they place these movies where they feel are the best for them. And so yeah, but with that aside, I feel like this movie does have like some strong themes besides what they provide to the lore. For example, we get to see the strange relationship between Ziggy and Cindy, and it serves as like the emotional core of this movie, highlighting like the themes of resilience and sacrifice as we see these two sisters who, one wants to not be a Shadysider and wants to like try and become a Sunnyvaler or be more like a Sunnyvaler, but like the other one is. And then we have Ziggy on the other side, where basically she's like, what's the point? We're always going to be Shadysiders. What's the point in trying to change that? We're never going to get out of here type of mentality. But as we see them faced with like this really serious, and like as they're like being hunted by Cindy's boyfriend who's possessed, we see them come together and like work together and like basically put all that aside. And it's like, it doesn't matter. Like the class and everything doesn't matter, because we are who we are, and at the end of the day, nothing's gonna change who we are, basically. And so that also goes into like the rivalry between Shadyside and Sunnyvale, because again, that plays a significant role in all of these movies, and it reinforces the idea that Shadysiders are doomed to suffer. They've been doomed to suffer since 1666, and like there's been no explanation as to like why it's been that way. And this movie also like explored how people are often consumed by darkness, whether they're through supernatural possession or like societal cruelty. And we see that in like Ziggy's character, how she's always like kind of like negative, and like she's like kind of like hopeless, especially since we see her get bullied by Sunnyvalers at this camp, and like she's always like the target throughout the camp. And then this movie also like embraces like the classic horror conventions and like horror tropes, as like when it comes to the summer camp setting with like Friday the 13th, Sleepaway Camp, movies like that. This movie challenges its expectations and its character arcs and emotional depth, where they feel more substantial and deep. And like fresh out of Stranger Things, we have Sadie Sink, who delivers such a standout performance as Ziggy, the main final girl, the protagonist, as she brings a raw emotion and intensity to the role. And then we have Emily Rudd, who plays Cindy, who provides a compelling contrast, portraying a character who's like desperate to escape her fate. Because it's also like fate versus free will, where basically, are you going to give into your fate of being a Shadysider and being stuck in Shadyside, or are you going to do something about it and like try to escape, which is what she tries to do by pretending to be a Sunnyvaler and like trying to be just like them. And like we see that in like present day too, or well, not present day, but like with the main characters in the first part in 1994. And then we see then we see McCabe Sly's transformation into the possessed Tommy Slayer, who is just like chilling, and he really feels like the embodiment of like a Jason Voorhees type of killer, which like they do give like some nods and homages when they place like the sack over his head to pay homage to Friday the 13th Part 2, where Jason has that before in Part 3 he gets the hockey mask. I really loved the ways that they paid homage to the classics, because I feel like some of these movies, these now modern horror movies, some of them do pay homage better than others do, and I feel like this is a perfect example of that. And then Leigh Janiak, I hope I said the name of the director correctly, expertly like balances the nostalgia factor of these classic horror tropes with the modern horror sensibilities. And the film's like pacing is tight and fast, which I love, but again, I feel like it's fast to the point where they don't really explain a lot. In Fear Street 1978, like it maintains the suspense while allowing character development, but I feel like they could have added some more like development on the lore they've thrown in, or like to the overarching story that they have with this trilogy. And I feel like they used the first part and the third part to really like give a lot more of that. But again, the cinematography just captures the eerie atmosphere of Camp Nightwing with like the warm summer tones against like the brutal violence that goes on. Which, yeah, I'm a big sucker for like all that violence and all that like gore, grotesque. I love it. And like you also get more use of like the practical effects that enhances the visceral impact of the kills and like the brutality of it. Which I will always say, practical is always better than CGI and like computer generated effects. It just helps make them feel more raw and unsettling, which happens in this movie. And just the score with the like 70s rock tracks that we get just further immerses you into like the era of like the summer of like the 70s, 1978 to be more exact. But yeah, I really did enjoy this part, but it's to me it's not the best. But again, I would give this a B plus. To rank or to give a rating to Prom Queen, I'd probably give it like a C plus, C minus, somewhere around that. Like it's average, but like it's not terrible. It's just like meh. That's why I give Prom Queen. This one I give a B plus, I think. Yeah. And then moving on to second place, we have Fear Street Part 3, 1666. And so, Part 3 serves as the gripping conclusion to the Fear Street trilogy, tying together the supernatural horror elements with a historical backdrop that deepens the lore of Shadyside. And so, the film follows Dina as she like experiences a vision through like the eyes of Sarah Fear in 1666, uncovering like the origins of the town's curse, in like the precursor to Shadyside and Sunnyvale. And we see Sarah Fear and her friends who stumble upon a book of black magic in like a witch's like cabin, and it like sets off chain events of that lead up to like the accusations of Sarah Fear being a witch and her using witchcraft. And like there's like this twist where basically we find out that Solomon Good, who was like a great ancestor of Nicholas Good, I believe the cop's name is. Yeah, I believe that's the kid. Who we also see in 1978. Like he's like the one like key factor within like the whole trilogy. Like the Solomon like the Good family. The Good family. You get what I mean? Like, and so like this paranoia grips the town, and as Sarah and Hannah Miller become like the scapegoats and are accused of bringing misfortune to Shadyside, when really we find out that it's Solomon Good who's like doing these rituals and like sacrificing Shadysiders for like fortune and like for Sunnyvale to be rich, basically. And so the movie ultimately reveals the true source of the curse, which is Solomon Good's pact with the devil, which has plagued Shadyside for centuries. And there's many reasons why I like this movie better than like the others. For example, the film explores how fear and superstition lead to scapegoating and mirroring like real world historical witch trials, where we see like where this movie takes place in 1666, which is like a big time jump from the 1994, 1978, like it's like centuries before. And I really like the setting, like the set pieces that they use. like I can't speak on like how like accurate it is, but like I just love like historical movies like this, where they try to reinvent and recapture those moments. And I feel like this one did great in my opinion of like the witch trials and like back in those days where they used to call women witches because they were different. And they didn't want to fall into the societal like expectations of women basically. And we see that with Sarah and Hannah's relationship, where it's the central narrative of this movie, where highlighting how societal norms have historically demonized like gay love, like because I believe there was something that I was said in the beginning where Sarah's father wanted her to marry some guy in the village, but it was like she'd rather be single. And then we find out that Sarah and this one girl in the village named Hannah, they have like an unforbidden love. Like they make out in the woods and all that. I believe their friends are aware of it, but like they just ignore it. Like they don't have a problem with it. And it just goes to show like the societal norms of, or like how whenever like people back then would look at something and think it wasn't conventional or that it shouldn't be like it shouldn't be deemed as normal, they used to be like, oh, she's a witch, blah, blah, like, and like call it bad and all that. And I like how this movie, like, it feels so, like, the central narrative in this movie, it takes place so long ago, yet it still feels so relatable and so personal and so real and so relevant to today. It's just crazy to me. Again, horror movies are political. I don't care what anyone says. This goes to show it right here. Anyway, and then we also see the good family, because they're evil. Good family's generational curse highlights themes of systematic oppression and the manipulation of history for personal gain. Which, like, I can talk about that for forever, but I'm trying to make my video shorter, so I'm not really going to talk too much about that. But yeah, you see the Good family, Sunnyvalers. I believe Nicholas Good's like older brother is mayor in Sunnyvale. So like they have all the wealth, they have all the class, they have everything that you could want. And then you have Shayside on one side, where they have the complete opposite. They're poor. They're always like looked down upon, and it's all because the Good family like did these rituals where they sacrificed Shaysiders for their own wealth, basically. And that speaks so much depth and so much length. Like when you like think about that more and more, it's like the undertones of that. It's just crazy. And then how they like tie it back, because I believe it's like at like the hour mark is when they switch back to 1994 part 2, where we get like the second half of it being in like 1994. And I like how they tie that back to the present day storyline, showing how uncovering the truth can break cycles of suffering. And how, like, in the first part, we see the same actresses who play Sarah and Hannah. They they use the same actresses for 666 as they did with the 1994. And, like, they're also in love. And, like, they feel like they have to hide it from everyone. And, like, they're both Shaysiders, but I believe the actress who plays Hannah, I forgot the character's name. She's played by Olivia Welch. She tries to be a Sunnyvale like Ziggy's sister Cindy in 1978. And so like a lot of, it's like all three parts, like they tell basically, they have like the same tones and everything, but like they explore them deeper and like in different ways. And that's why I love about this trilogy. It's like you have, in two parts you have like the lovers, and then in like the middle part you have two sisters who are like on like different sides of this. But like they're on the same side, but one's trying to be on like the different side and trying to escape who they are. But just like what Chapo Rome says, you'd have to stop the world to stop the feeling. Yeah. So, and that's basically what happens within this. That's basically what happens in this. That's basically what happens within this movie. And we see Sarah Fear sacrifice herself for Hannah and get hung as the witch of Shadyside, basically. And she curses the Good family, basically being like, one day, like, the truth will be told, and until then, I put a curse on the good family and on Sunnyvale, basically. But yeah, kiana Madeira delivers a standout performance as Sarah Fear, going from her role as Dina, I believe her name is, going from that to Sarah Fear. Like, she just embodies both characters with emotional depth, and like it's almost like she, like, with any imperfections, is able to go from Dina to Sarah Fear, and that was just crazy to me. And then we have Ashley Zuckerman's portrayal of Solomon Good, who also plays Good or Nathan Good, something like that, something bad. He adds layers to like the antagonist, making him both charismatic and sinister. But I feel like there wasn't much difference between Solomon Good and Nick Good, I believe his name is. There wasn't really much difference in the acting there. But then we have Olivia Scott Welch, who, this isn't the first time I've seen her in anything, because I remember watching her in this series. It only lasted for one season on Amazon Prime called Panic, which if you haven't seen that yet, I recommend checking it out. It only lasted one season, but I thought it was underrated. It wasn't talked about enough, and yeah, unfortunately, it was like a casualty of the pandemic. But yeah, she was great in that. I believe she was the main character in that show on Amazon Prime. And then yeah, we also have Gillian Jacobs, who also brings a compelling performance and like reinforces the emotional stakes of the narrative within this movie, as he plays like the younger brother of Sarah Fear, but also the younger brother of Dina. Also, I remember him from like Game Shakers on Nickelodeon, which like I never watched that show, but I know my sister did. But yeah, it was a great seeing him in this. But yeah, Lee's direction is particularly effective in blending like the horror with like the historical drama, as we have like the historical events that kind of remind you of like The Witch or like Sleepy Hollow type of like setting, but then you like combine that with the slasher like mystery whodunit of in like the 90s, and like it's really ambitious and different, and the way that they were able to execute that without making it feel unbalanced or out of place, I feel like it's perfect. And I think that's another reason why I feel like this 1666 is better, is because they attempted something and they were able to execute it perfectly, or near, because like you have like the cinematography that shifts to like an earthy palette to reflect like the 17th century setting, and then you contrast that with like the neon soaked visuals of the previous movies, like in 1994 and 1978, and like the pacing is also different. The builds tension effectively, and then within like a satisfying resolution that ties the trilogy together like in a bow, and it just ever feel out of place, or like these two parts of the movie like don't like fit well together. But and that's why I was worried. That's what I was worried about when I first watched it. I was like, okay, wait. Look, it felt like if you watch it and you don't look at the time, you're like, okay, so this is about end, but why does it feel so short? And then you're hit with 1994 title card with part 2, and you're like, oh wait, that's weird. That's kind of different. But why do I kind of love it, and why is it kind of working? It's because it's different, and in that way, it kind of also feels like they're kind of saying with that. Yeah, I might be going a little tinfoil hat here, but it's kind of like they're saying like two different people can come together, like with that setting and like the setting of 1994, they can come together and they mix basically. That's what it feels like, and you can take that as you will. But now that I'm thinking about that, that's kind of like, am I being a little too like is that a little like too far fetched to think about that? That's kind of like what did that like purposefully maybe, or am I stretching it? Am I like reaching a little too far? Let me know. Let me know down below. But I don't know, I just thought about that, and it kind of like was like a light bulb over the top of my head type of moment. But yeah, the movie's ability to balance the period horror with modern sensibilities is what makes it a standout entry within like the series, and as in a horror, in the horror genre as a whole, in my opinion. It was crazy because I was even debating putting this in the first place, but I feel like I just love like that 1990s like setting of like a slasher movie more. I love like the setup that they do. But moving into first place, we have first Fear Street Part 1, 1994. And this is what starts off the trilogy. It's a thrilling blend of slasher horror with like a supernatural mystery, kicking off the Fear Street trilogy with a nostalgic yet fresh take on the genre, as it's set in the cursed town of Shadyside, and the film follows Dina Johnson and her friends as they uncover the dark history behind a series of brutal murders. The town has long been plagued by inexplicable killings, which many believe are linked to the vengeful spirit of Sarah Fear, a witch executed in 1666, as we talked about before, when Dina's ex-girlfriend Sam, because they broke up because Sam got a boyfriend and she wanted to be more like be more of like a Sunnyvaler. She has a vision. No, I believe what happened is basically her parents got divorced, so she had a decision to stay in Shadyside or move to Sunnyvale with her father, and she chose to move to Sunnyvale and be more like them, and that's what made them split. And she got a boyfriend, and so when Sam has a vision of Sarah Fear after a car accident, the group finds themselves hunted by resurrected killers from Shadeside's past. So I remember I think one was Ruby Lane, which we do see Ruby Lane's mom as a camp counselor in 1978, in the part 2. So that's like little puzzle piece there. And so their desperate attempt to break the curse leads them to uncover chilling secrets about their town's history. And this is where I'm going to talk about what I feel like they could do. And I said this when the original trilogy came out. What they could do is that they could go the Goosebumps route and do an anthology series, but more modernized and more grounded, where they could do like an American Horror Story type of like series, and each season or each episode we can follow each one of these like killers from the Sarah Fear's curse. I believe one's is like Billy something. Is the old man who like looks burnt and has like a knife. And then you have Ruby Lane who like has like a razor blade. You can tell each of these stories in like their own unique way, and like some of them didn't even get enough screen time, because now we have Tommy, we have the two killers. Well, yeah, Sam being one of them in 1994, and then the opening one who killed Maya Hawke's character, which that was crazy. Really, you're gonna kill Maya Hawke of all people? You should be ashamed of yourself. I'm kidding, but yeah, I feel like there is potential for them to make that a series, and I would really like to see that. If it's done well, that is. But anyway. But yeah, this film explores like the themes of fate versus free will, like I said, as the Shadyside residents struggle against a seemingly predetermined cycle of violence that's been just plaguing the Shadyside town and like centuries, for decades. And it also delves into like the class division, contrasting the cursed Shadyside with the neighboring town of Sunnyvale, where it's always sunny, it's always sunny and shiny, and just the power of folklore and urban legends just plays such a central role as the characters navigate the blurred lines between what is real and what is not. And then additionally, the film highlights the gay LGBTQ representation with Dina and Sam's relationship, which we've seen which we saw in part 3 as well, and that just and that just gives emotional depth to the horror narrative. And then we have Kiana Madeira, who delivers a compelling performance as Dina, balancing the toughness and vulnerability of her character. And then Olivia Scott Welch, who brings subtlety to Sam, making her more than just a damsel in distress, especially when she becomes possessed by Sarah Fear or like by the demon, and like they have to try and like save her. I thought that was unique and interesting. We then have Benjamin Flores Jr. Wait, I just realized I mixed up two different actors. So Benjamin Flores Jr. plays Josh, who is the younger brother. The other actor who played Gillian Jacobs. So let me go back. Gillian Jacobs plays the adult Ziggy, and yeah, she does bring compelling performances, reinforcing like the emotional stakes. So I was confused. So Gillian Jacobs plays adult Ziggy, and then it's Benjamin Flores Jr. who plays Josh, who is the younger brother. I got completely with the names because I'm not good with names. So yeah, Gillian Jacobs, who plays adult Ziggy, she did great in part 2, but we mostly see her in part 3. and I feel like seeing Sadie Sink as Ziggy and then seeing Gillian Jacobs as the adult, I feel like they do well as playing off of each other. Even playing, they do great as being the same character. And then Benjamin Flores Jr., he shines as Josh, who is like the conspiracy obsessed younger brother who provides a lot of like the comic relief and mostly crucial exposition, because he's the one who knows a lot about this lore and about like this legend. He's the one who like has like a board with like all of the killers and like all of the victims, and like he's the one who's like, before the movie even starts, he's the one like who's like been trying to piece this script together and like how does it all make sense basically. So he's kind of like the one who informs Dina and Sam and basically their friends of this like curse and the lore surrounding it. Then we have like the supporting cast and Julia Rewald, who I believe plays Kate, and then Fred Hetchinger, who was also in Hell of a Summer, which he was great in that. He was like the main final boy of that movie, directed by Finn Wolfhard. And they both add charm and energy, making the group's dynamic feel authentic and engaging. But Lee's like direction with this movie blends the 90s nostalgia with like modern horror sensibility. So it basically does like the same thing as part 2, but instead of 70s, it's like 90s. And like they like blend the two genres together. And just like the other parts, the first part has the tight pacing, keeping the tension high while allowing moments of character development with Dina, Sam, Josh, and like these other like, and then the other supporting characters. The soundtrack is packed with 90s hits, adding to the immersive experience and grounding the supernatural horror in a recognizable time period, which is the 90s. And in Janiak, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, but Lee Janiak as the director effectively balances like the slasher brutality with the emotional stakes of like this friend group and like what could be at stake trying to stop this curse. And it ensures that the deaths feel impactful rather than just, and like you actually feel like you care about these characters. Like I remember when the one girl Kate died, because they have some chemistry between her and Josh, and you just like, and then Fred Hetchinger, he plays like this like himbo type of character, and so he's like sweet and like you feel, and so like you kind of fall in love with him as well, and so you kind of like do get attached to these characters, and so it just sucks when like they finally get killed off by the end. And so if I had to rate 1666 and 1994, I would put part 3 at like an A minus, and then put part 1 at like an A plus. So it's like 9 out of 10, and then part 3 is an 8 out of 10, if that makes sense. So yeah, hope y'all did enjoy this video. If you did, please drop a like, subscribe if you are new to enjoying the Grimpire. Like I said, let me know what you thought about these movies down below. Did you like them? Did you like the new Prom Queen movie? I know a lot of people didn't like it. Like it's been getting like, it's been talked about how this is like the worst of the franchise, but I hope they're able to come back around and like have like a rebound and come out with like a banger. But let's just wait and see what they do. But yeah, all my socials are down in the description below. I have my Blue Sky down there, my Instagram, my TikTok. I also have my Twitch down there where I've been streaming a little bit more. I plan to do some streams of like Fortnite, Marvel Rivals, those type of games, because horror isn't the only thing that I like. So I'll be playing those games on stream if y'all want to check those out. Those will be on my Twitch. And let me know some feedback. What else would you like to see me watch and review? What do you think I can improve on? I really like some feedback, some thoughts. I plan to get better lighting in here. I know it sucks, but just some context. There's no lights on the ceiling. I have a lamp next to me, but it lights up the whole room, so it doesn't have like the red aesthetic to it, which I really like. So I'm trying to think of like different ways. If you have any like suggestions down below, I'd really like to hear some of your thoughts and like some like tips about that. I also plan to get a better camera at some point, but again, that'll happen over time. But yeah, I would provide links to, and since I'm not able to provide links to these movies since they're all on Netflix, I'll have links to the Fear Street books down below that these movies are inspired by or based on. so that you can check those out yourself down below. And so, yeah, if you haven't seen these movies yet, or if you now want to rewatch them, I recommend checking out the Fear Street movies on Netflix right now.